him on. Always excited to talk to him on a Thursday. Matt Lutovsky, sportingnews.com, fantasy god. Am I exaggerating when I say fantasy god?
Some people probably think so because last week I thought Kenyon Drake would have a bounce back, and 3 yards later, it's not looking good for Kenyon Drake. But so this will be a Drake-free segment.
All right, we're going to do Drake-free Matt Lutovsky, Sporting News. All right, let's talk right off the bat, because the game that everyone is looking at and trying to figure it out, if you landed Patrick Mahomes on your team, you are jumping up and down for joy. You're no doubt you're probably 4-0 at this point. But now he's going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and a lot of people are asking, do I start Patrick Mahomes this weekend? What would your answer be to that?
I think, it definitely depends on who else you have. I don't think he's the number one quarterback or anything because, look, last week, obviously, the team won. He led the comeback. He threw it left-handed. ESPN's crew freaked out. But the ultimate stats, 304 yards, 2 touchdowns, I don't know. Lots of guys put that up nowadays. So he's not that far away better than everyone every week, and against a defense like Jacksonville, it certainly could be a tough one. But it's at home. I think that's the biggest thing for him. The game's at home. He's still got all the weapons. He's still got all the talent, obviously. So to me, I think we have him ranked right around 7th or so in the quarterback rankings this week. So, I think most people who have him, you're probably starting him.
And you've got the Bears and the Buccaneers are on buys this week, so there is definitely going to be some roster shuffling around for a lot of people. And one of the other questions that we've gotten a lot too, Matt, is the return of Julian Edelman tonight for the New England Patriots, and people have been stashing him, and they want to know, do they dive right back in? Is tonight the time that you jump in on Julian Edelman and put him in your lineup?
I think so, especially in PPR leagues. I think you do. Obviously, we don't know. The Patriots passing game this year has been a total, mind bender. With people thought Hogan would really have a good start to the season. He's been almost a no-show, except for some kind of garbage time touchdowns against the Jags in week 2 of all teams. Josh Gordon didn't do much last week. Played 18 to 81 snaps. Is he going to play more? If Gronk is out, how does that change things? There's so many questions with that team, so many variables, but it seems like the one constant through the years is that when Julian Edelman plays, Tom Brady looks for him, especially on those 3rd and 4s in the slot. He gets 5. I think the catches are going to be there for sure. Whether or not he gets a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns, that was always tough with Edelman. I think one thing to remember about him, though, he's 32, and he's not just suspended. He's coming off a torn ACL. So there's a lot of mystery surrounding him. But I don't know. If I had him, I'd push him in my lineup, wide receiver 3 tonight, especially in PPR, and just hope he racks up those catches.
Is there we're being asked, is there a kind of a must start tonight in tonight's game? Is there anybody that you're looking at going, if you got him, you've got to play him? Are we going to see a follow-up show to the running game for the New England Patriots? Who do you like? Josh Gordon? Is there anybody?
I think must start, is Brady, and I think it's James White. Michelle, I don't think is a must start, but James White, again, certainly in PPR, I think is a must start. Brady loves him. If Gronk's active, must start. Gordon's not a must start. Edelman's not a must start. Luck's not necessarily a must start with no T.Y. Hilton. I like him. I think, he's right on that QB1 bubble. I think Eric Ebron, just because of how thin tight end is a must start if you have him. But other than that, it's kind of rough. It's someone's going to do well for the Colts, wide receiver Chester Rogers or Ryan Grant, or maybe Naheem Hines has another good game out of the backfield, catches the ball. But by no means are those guys that you gotta play. It's one of those after the fact you go, oh, look at that.
Yep.
Wish I had played him, but moving on.
Yeah, and we've got some questions rolling in here, and you guys know how to reach us. You can always hit us up here, 855-WTF-2255, or hit us up in the chat rooms like you guys are. We've got John wants to know Russell Wilson or Marcus Mariota this week. Who would you start?
Man, that's tough. I mean, obviously Wilson was the guy he drafted much higher. And Mariota really hasn't done much, showed up last week there late, looked good. I think Wilson does have a lot of garbage time potential. I think you always like him at home. I kind of like Mariota, though, in that matchup better. I could see the Bills' run game getting going, which is a worry, but I still just like that matchup so much better for Mariota. And I think they're both kind of low-ceiling players this week. So I would take Mariota, who I think has a little bit higher floor.
Interesting. Okay. Another quarterback question coming in. Andrew Luck tonight or Patrick Mahomes versus Jacksonville?
Yeah, there I'm going Mahomes. It might be a little bit different if T.Y. Hilton was healthy, but since he's not and the Colts are so banged up, I think Luck, again, another good garbage time potential situation for him to rack up some cheap yards late. But I still think you got to go Mahomes there. And
we've got, let's see who we got here. We've got Michael wants to know, half PPR, need two. John Brown, Taywan Taylor, Josh Gordon, or Alshon Jeffrey?
I think Jeffrey's a guy you play. Obviously, the Vikings are coming off that game last week where every Rams wide receiver went off on them. So I think he's good. I mean, he's going to be up and down because that's Alshon Jeffrey. But I'm still good with him. And then John Brown I like, too. Great start to the year. They're throwing the ball deep. He's making those big plays again. And, the Brown secondary doesn't scare me. So I like those guys this week.
All right, very good there. We've got Matt Lutovsky, sportingnews.com, joining us here. Stardom Situm Fantasy, trying to make you a little bit of money this week, or at least kind of redeem yourself after he offered Kenyon Drake a number of times on the show last week, but I won't say anything there. Let's go PPR flex here. I've got a couple of choices from Adam. Wants to know Devin Funchess, Sammy Watkins, Giovanni Bernard, or Matt Breida.
Well, I think Breida is the must-start there. I mean, going into that matchup, Arizona by far allowing the most fantasy points to running backs. Look, he increased his snap share last week, his workload share. Alfred Morris is still around. He's still getting some goal line sort of playing time, but Breida's just explosive. You give that guy the ball, he's averaging like 8 yards a touch. So I'm a big fan of him. And then, the number 2 guy on that list, I think, is probably Funchess. Not a great matchup, but I do like coming off a bye. I'm assuming Greg Olsen will be out again. Funchess usually steps up, sees more looks when Greg Olsen is out.
And what do you think about the Cincinnati running back situation? Joe Mixon is scheduled to come back. I think they said he's going to play. Giovanni Bernard is still nursing the whole knee thing. Do you risk it with either one of those, or do you look for other options?
I mean, I think it might come down to if only one is active, right? If only one's active, then you like the other one. The way it's looking right now, and Mixon might be more likely to play than Bernard. So that's a real situation. If they're both active and they're both gimpy, then you might just want to pull back and see what happens, because that's not a good situation for either. But, we have Mixon ranked higher. I think if he's active, he's going to be the more dominant guy in the backfield most weeks.
Yeah, well, he certainly is. And I know there's a couple of interesting road teams and players on these teams. You got Denver traveling East Coast, going to the New York Jets, and you do have Tennessee on the road heading up to Buffalo. And we've gotten a whole bunch of stacking questions on whether or not it's a smart move to, stack some of the players on these road teams going into Buffalo and into MetLife Stadium.
No, I mean, I think Tennessee, like I said, I think they'll have a good game. I think this is the week Derrick Henry gets off the schneid. This might be my Kenyon Drake moment of this segment, saying Derrick Henry's going to get going this week. But I'm going to go for it. I'm going to stand by it. I actually think you can play both those Titans backs this week. I really like them. Corey Davis has established himself, too, as a guy you're going to play every week. So I don't mind Tennessee. They don't scare me. But the Broncos do. And it's funny because the Jets just gave up 200-yard receivers to Jacksonville, and those guys aren't as good as Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. So, and Denver's got good running backs, and they're playing well. So there's reason to feel good about their players. But, we all know the narrative, Monday night hangover, tough loss, west to east, early afternoon game. I think Denver's players might do okay for fantasy purposes, but just Denver as a team, I don't know. I don't know about that game. So that one's way more worrisome. And I definitely, like in DFS contests, I wouldn't want to stack too many Broncos. I'd probably take it easy, let someone else sort of take that risk, and find some different plays elsewhere.
We've got a interesting question coming in from a betting standpoint. One of the prop bets tonight wants to know if you think Josh Gordon, if I play Josh Gordon, under 3.5 receptions or over 3.5 receptions. What do you think?
Ooh, that's rough. I mean, the prop game isn't necessarily, it's kind of entirely my thing, but not, specifically my thing. But I think 3.5, you look at what he did last week, he caught 2, had 1 called back, so almost 3 catches. You figure he plays a few more snaps. That might come down to whether or not Gronk plays, but I think the safe bet on that one is the under.
And how about a tough matchup? Well, I guess Sean Lee is out, but Deshaun Watson, we did get a bunch of questions surrounding him. Is he considered one of those tier 1 quarterbacks, one of those must-start situations, taking on the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, I think so, because, look, I describe Watson as a real-life fantasy football player. Like, they have no running game. It reminds me a lot of Russell Wilson. They could run back in the day, but maybe Russell Wilson from last year or the year before, where he has a bad line, no running game, and just runs around and shuts it and, makes plays and gets yards. And even if the team loses at the end of the game, you go, man, Watson put up numbers, man. And he's got receivers. Sounds like Will Fuller's going to play. Obviously, Hopkins, he made a one-game star out of Kiki Cutie last week. So I think they got something there. I think Watson's fine. Cowboys have been decent defensively, but, Matt Stafford got him for a bunch of yards, a couple touchdowns last week. And I think Watson's going to get him at home in a primetime game, too.
We got another quarterback question coming in, and this is a tough one. I don't even know where to go with this. Is it Kirk Cousins taking on Philadelphia or Matthew Stafford taking on Green Bay?
Yeah, that's a classic flip a coin. Yeah. There's too many good quarterbacks. Everyone should be in a 2-quarterback league now because there's too many of them, and you could just play both. I mean, we have Cousins, I believe, a little bit higher. Obviously, the matchup looks tougher on paper. He's on the road. So for those reasons, Stafford might be the higher floor guy. And, if you're just looking for that safe, high floor point, I think there's a good case to be made for Stafford. But I don't know. I just think that Vikings offense is really good. And obviously what happened in Buffalo, or against Buffalo, still has people spooked about them. But I just think they're good. And I think those receivers are so good. And, matchup proof, obviously, is too strong because we've seen them falter against a bad defense, but I feel pretty confident in that Vikings passing game and receiving game.
This is a tough one, too, because we got to run on quarterback questions here, but Derek Carr taking on the Chargers, and then you've got Andy Dalton taking on Miami at home. Derek Carr is on the road, but it's not as if he hasn't been chucking it all over the field here, so would you go with Andy Dalton or Derek Carr?
Yeah, and I mean, does that even count as a road game when you go to LA to play the Chargers in front of 30,000 people? I don't even know if that really counts for Derek Carr. So I like Carr a little bit there. I think both have the same sort of potential and upside. We know the yards have been there for Carr this year, and he's throwing it, and the touchdowns haven't quite been there yet. But I feel like they're gonna follow. That game kind of has shootout potential. Everyone's focused on Falcons Steelers for obvious reasons for shootout potential. That's sort of the quiet late afternoon sort of shootout to watch, I think. And you can just imagine you're sitting around watching Red Zone or you're watching your game, Eagles Vikings, and let's go to L.A. where Martavis Bryant just had an 80-yard touchdown, and you're like, what? He's on a team still? That just strikes me as the stupid game, the stupid late afternoon game this week, where there's going to be some dumb stats put up. I kind of like Carr there.
I think so, too. I think you're absolutely correct there. Matt Lutovsky, sportingnews.com. Stardom, Sid'em here, trying to make you a little bit of money this weekend. All right, a couple more. This one's a tight end question. Want to know whether or not they should go with Eric Ebron tonight or Jared Cook this weekend.
Yeah, one of the rare person who has 2 good tight ends. I mean, I'd be looking to trade one of those because there's someone in your league who's starting Red Ellison or Austin Hooper this week. Who could use one of those 2 guys.
Exactly.
I think with T.Y. Hilton out, Ebron's the number 1 target on that team. And, the narrative with the past is always, hey, Bill Belichick schemes to take away the top option. I don't know if Eric Ebron's the top offensive option on the Colts, but perhaps the pass will do that. try to limit him? I don't know, but I would still take my chances with him because the targets have been there. We saw a couple weeks ago when the Colts were in a garbage time situation, and Luck was just dumping to him at the end of the game. I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened again this week. So I would take my chances with Ebron. Cook never had 2 good games in a row. It might be physically impossible for him to do that. So even though I do think that's going to be a stupid day, but I certainly could see him producing. That's what would cause me to take Ebron over him this week.
Another tight end question. This one is tough too. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, who is taking on that atrocious defense at Kansas City, or David Njoku taking on a very stout and very tough Baltimore Ravens defense. Who do you like there?
Yeah, I mean that guy should try to work out a trade with the guy in the last question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would. Look, neither of them have done anything, and Njoku seems like the guy who's going to do something soon and catch a touchdown and do something more. It's going to come eventually. I just hate that matchup. Basically, what you said there, and ASJ has a good matchup, and certainly he could throw up a 1 catch for 8-yard game too. But in those situations, I'm going to play the matchup unless one guy's getting way more targets consistently. I play the matchup, so I would go ASJ.
All right, and give us your sleeper of the weekend here, Matt. Tell us who is. Give us a name, somebody we should look at that might surprise all of us, and don't give me Kenyon Drake.
No, I'm definitely not going to give you Kenyon Drake. It sounds like Will Fuller is going to play. I think Kiki Cutie could have another good game, though, if he doesn't. So that's a guy to watch. Another guy I like, Sterling Shepard at this point, not really a sleeper, but the Panthers have struggled against number 2 wide receivers the last couple weeks. I think this is the week Aaron Jones takes off for Green Bay and really solidifies himself as their number 1 back. A couple guys like that sort of in the middle. I mean, man, if you want to go deep, one of those Redskins receivers, I got Josh Doxson just because I think Crowder will be in the slot. He won't be covered by Lattimore. I think Marshawn Lattimore is most likely to cover Paul Richardson. Saints give up the most fantasy points to wide receivers. I think this could be the week Doxson finally shows up. And one more, just because the Packers, all 3 of their starting wide receivers are hurt and questionable. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is a guy who could do something big this week, but God help you if you're starting Marquez Valdes-Scantling this week.
Yeah, exactly. At that point, maybe you ought to just sit a week down, just throw up the white flag. All right, Matt Lutovsky, sportingnews.com. You want to check him out? Follow him on Twitter, @Lutovsky. Some amazing stats come out each and every week. His numbers and his articles are spot on, so definitely check him out. Matt Lutovsky, sportingnews.com. Matt, pleasure, my friend. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk again next week. All right, guys, it is Thursday. That means it is time for a little Wager Talk, brought to you by WagerTalk.com. We bring in the legend, the man, the myth. He is here. It is Ralph Michaels. He joins us via the Miami Acura hotline. And, Ralph, thanks for stopping by on this Thursday, my friend.
Always a pleasure. Doing your show is always a highlight of my week. I thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, that's what my ex-wife said for a long, long time until she left me. Appreciate that, though, Ralph. Honestly, I really do, man. Love the smoke you're blowing my way. Let's talk some exciting football, certainly here in South Florida this weekend. We've got the old rivalry back in center stage. Miami taking on Florida State. Florida State just not very good this year. Miami is hoping to kind of start their own streak. They won last year. They're hoping maybe to rattle off a few more wins moving forward. What do you think about this game? We're looking almost 2 touchdowns now, Ralph.
You know what? You need motivation to cover this kind of game. Obviously, it's a rivalry, so any extra motivation is great. And I think Miami, from what I'm reading, is really circle the wagons, beating North Carolina like they did and dropping in the polls. They have to make a statement. The thing I like about this Miami team is 60 TFLs. Put it in perspective, last year the leader in college football was Ohio State. They had 113 TFLs on the year. Miami already with 60. We've seen Florida State allow 4 sacks to Syracuse, 5 sacks to Virginia Tech, and they really struggled in those games when getting pressure. I think Miami gets that pressure, and in fact, I have Miami winning and covering this week.
Wow, there you go. Miami fans are going to love to hear that. Ralph Michaels joining us, wagertalk.com, at Cal Sports LV. And, you know, Ralph, before we go any further, you got some very interesting free information at wagertalk.com that anybody who's even thinking about betting on some of the games this weekend should probably go and download. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, if you go to the wagertalk.com website and you go to the handicappers on the top toolbar, just go to the Cal Sports download, and every day you get my free downloads. You have to register once, but there's no credit card needed. Once you register, you can download these free every day and every week. The Gridiron Guide is the first. That's a full page on every game. It gives you the yardage, the lines, it gives you the log, it gives you quarter-by-quarter scoring for those that can play the first quarter or first half bets. And then it gives you 20 ATS and over-under categories, how teams do as home favorites, home dogs, off a loss, off a win. So that's a great tool each week. And then the second, and I'm really proud of this, is a stat comparison sheet, which just started this week. And you can look at every game, and it has my offense, defense, and special teams ratings. We know that just because you lead the NCAA in offense doesn't mean you're the best offense in football. It's relative to the strength of schedule you played. So those are unique. You have the strength of schedule. And, you know, this game we just finished talking about, Miami and Florida State. Florida State's offense, based on the schedule they've played, is number 117 out of 130 FBS teams. That shows how bad they've been.
Yeah, it has not been good, and FSU fans, they're just hoping if they can beat Miami, then they don't care if they lose every other game throughout the year. They've kind of already come to that realization right now. Ralph Michaels joining us. So get to wagertalk.com. Some very valuable information that you can get there for free. All right, we'll keep it in South Florida. A lot of people in the Boca Raton area loving the FAU Owls, taking on those pesky Old Dominion Monarchs who took down Virginia Tech just a couple of weeks ago. I know we talked about this team last week. You were very weary about them. You know, the public tends to jump all over somebody that they just saw beat a team like Virginia Tech, and they're taking on FAU, who is really the only team this year that has taken UCF as really exchanged blows with UCF from an offensive standpoint here. What do you like with the FAU Owls versus the Old Dominion? I don't happen to think this is going to be a game. I think Florida Atlantic is going to run it up on them, but what do you see?
Well, you know, Old Dominion went to a quarterback change, and we talked about it last week, and they impressed me going to East Carolina, at least on the scoreboard. At first, I thought I was impressed because they only lost 37-35. But if you look at the yardage, Old Dominion actually got outgained by 221 yards. So there is some value playing against Old Dominion. While most look at them and say, well, they covered against East Carolina. In fact, they shouldn't have covered. They were very fortunate with some defensive and special teams big plays. Now, FIU, I think the offense is still not where it was last year. Yes, they hung tough with UCF, and they only got outgained by 98 yards on the road, and they were minus 3 turnovers. Going to Middle Tennessee, they had the yardage edge last week, but lost. You know, I think Bryles moving to Houston as the OC and Charlie Weiss Jr. moving in, the offense is not quite what it is to the level it is. But I also think that FAU's offense is good enough against this Old Dominion defense that's allowing 509 yards per game to score a lot. And I think Old Dominion against this FAU offense, remember I said last week, East Carolina was one of the most improved defenses. Florida Atlantic is not one of those best defenses. I look for a very high-scoring game.
Yes, well, I do too, and it's just one-dimensional with the Monarchs. They're averaging just 3.1 yards per carry this season. That's not going to get it done, especially when you go up against an offense like that at FAU. And then the other Florida team we got, Ralph, is LSU taking on Florida. That's right, and it's going to be Gainesville, the Swamp. It's going to be an awful lot of fun, but Florida not used to being an underdog in their own building. What do you think, LSU minus 2.5 right now?
You know, full disclosure, I was wrong about LSU going to Auburn. I liked the Tigers. I was wrong about LSU last week against Mississippi. They laid it on with 573 yards. But now they're going on the road, and the difference in this game to me is Dan Mullen. I loved what he did at Mississippi State. Look at the drop-off at Mississippi State this year with him being gone. I think he's the difference maker in Florida. Both of these defenses rank in my top 12. I think it's a low-scoring game, and although Joey Burrow had some success last week, the LSU quarterback, he's still only completing 53% of his passes, and LSU as a team is only averaging 4.4 yards per carry. You look at the Florida side, on offense, they're averaging 5.3 yards per carry, with Dameon Pierce averaging 10.6 yards per carry, and Felipe Franks is the real deal with a 12-3 ratio.
Ralph Michaels joining us, wagertalk.com. Make sure you head over to wagertalk.com. Some great, valuable, free information there if you're planning on diving in and taking any action this weekend. I happen to agree with you. I think Florida's I like Florida's chances in this game at home in the Swamp. That place is going to be crazy. And one of the other games that we're hearing a lot about, and this is another one of those public perception recency bias, the public is buying Notre Dame, man. They are believing big in Notre Dame, but they've got a pretty tough matchup in the ACC. Virginia Tech this weekend there. What do you like this? Virginia Tech getting 6.5 and 7 in some lines.
Now, unlike LSU, I've had a great feel for Notre Dame, and I thought Ian Book did what he did against Wake Forest, and look what they did against Stanford, putting up 550 yards. Not only is Ian Book making his third start now, you also got back Dexter Williams last week. Dexter Williams, a running back who last year averaged 9.2 yards per carry. He was suspended the first 4 games. His first game back against Stanford, 161 yards, 7.7 yards per carry. Now, the problem I have is this. The Irish already are talking about, we're going to be favored in this game. We're going to be favored in this game. We're going to be favored in this game. We run the table. We have to get to the championship. Those players are thinking that exact same scenario. I think this is the trap game of the week. You have a Bud Foster defense that's playing well in lieu of one game. They had one bad game against Old Dominion, and Old Dominion had gone to a quarterback they didn't prep for, so they weren't quite ready. But you look at Virginia Tech as a home dog. In their last 51 non-conference games, Virginia Tech is 48-3 straight up. Only one loss in 51 non-conference games was by over a touchdown, and that one loss was to the number 1 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes, who had revenge for losing as a double-digit favorite at home the year before. I think Bud Foster slows it down. I think Virginia Tech's a very live home dog and a good chance to pull the upset.
Love that. And I got to mention this, too. I got to bring this up because I know we had talked about this game last week. California had the late game against Oregon, and then they turned the ball over 5 times, and then that was the end of that. I actually do like California. They are heading over to one of the most disappointing teams in the Pac-12. Kevin Sumlin, Arizona, watched that game, too, and was just completely disappointed in them and their performance last week, too. You've got California as a slight favorite in this game. Arizona at home. What do you like in here? What do you don't like about California and Arizona?
Well, I love the way Justin Wilcox has this team going. And remember, the Bears had 18 starters back this year. So you had a team that was decent last year, just missed bowl eligibility, and they've shown they're very capable of doing what they can do is win games. And Arizona, obviously there's an issue with Khalil Tate. We don't know what that is. Khalil Tate jumped on the scene last year, mid-year through the year, rushed for 1,400 yards and 9.2 yards per carry as their quarterback. 1,400 yards in 7 games last year. That's 200 yards a game. This year, he has 70 yards rushing in 5 games. So either Sumlin is a complete fool and doesn't want to run him, or obviously I think there's an injury where Tate can't run. Well, when you have Arizona and a very mediocre team and a quarterback who is supposed to be a dual threat quarterback and can only complete 53% of his passes, he's not the guy you want back there in the situation. I favor California.
Yeah, I agree with you there 100%. Ralph Michaels joining us, wagertalk.com, at Cal Sports LV. All right, let's transition. NFL game tonight, Thursday Night Football. Colts Patriots. I'm not even sure we can call this a rivalry anymore, Ralph. I'm pretty sure it's not a rivalry. Means you have a chance of, winning some of the games in the past, but I think we're going on a 7-0 streak now for the New England Patriots against this team. But with no T.Y. Hilton, no Marlon Mack, no Jack Doyle for the Colts, we do have a rejuvenated and what appears to be a very healthy Andrew Luck. And if you're going to lay 10 points, double digits in this game, be wary with a healthy Andrew Luck. How do you see it?
Agree with that thought. And, this is a game that I'm not playing for my customers. But if I had to pick a side, I would think I would lean with the Patriots. I think we see that last week they were a different offense. You have to remember that 2 weeks ago when they went to Detroit and lost that game on Sunday night or Monday night, whatever it was, they only had 3 wide receivers on the roster. I mean, they line up with 4 receivers sometimes and then need a backup. They only had 3 wide receivers. They now have a few people back and healthy. Andrew Luck is 0-5 against Bill Belichick. And an amazing stat I tweeted out earlier, Andrew Luck's career quarterback rating is 87.7. We know Belichick can come up with defenses that stymies rookies, but he's come up with defenses that have also stymied Andrew Luck in the past. Andrew Luck, 87.7 career rating, 65.1 QB rating when he's facing Belichick. So he's really struggled. One note I will say, though, Andrew Luck has been money off a loss. They are off that loss to Houston. It is tough playing overtime and traveling on a short week to Thursday, but Luck is 23-6 against the spread off a loss, including 8-0 straight up, 7-1 ATS's last 8 games.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty impressive. That's a pretty impressive number there. Ralph Michaels joining us. Ralph, one of these other games that I'm looking at on the board this weekend, and this line makes no sense to me, and I'm hoping you can shed some light. The Denver Broncos traveling to New York. I get the whole West Coast team coming to the East Coast, but why are the Jets a -1 favorite, even though they're at home here? I don't see it. What do you think about this? Is this one of those double take games here that we're looking at?
Well, I think people just feel Denver's in a letdown spot, having played Kansas City and losing in last minute to Mahomes like they did. But I agree with you. Although I actually give 2 or 3 points to the New York Jets because of the situation. Denver off an East Coast trip to Baltimore, coming back to face your division rivals on Monday night, and going back to the East Coast is very difficult. But now we have a defense that's playing very well, be it they gave up 446 yards to Mahomes. They gave up 22 first downs, and they played well as a team. The New York Jets team, Sam Darnold we thought was the second coming of Joe Namath. But, playing a rookie quarterback with a new offense the first week and they put up 48 Detroit, that's not that much of a surprise. Last 3 weeks, 12 points to Miami, 17 points at Cleveland, 12 points at Jacksonville, playing a physical Jacksonville team and now playing another physical Denver team. I think we're going to see Sam Darnold probably get sacked 4 or 5 times on the day, and I think he's really going to struggle.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very long day for the New York Jets and their fan base there. And you mentioned Jacksonville. The other game a lot of people excited about, of course, is the Kansas City Chiefs. We got the one of the top leading offense in the National Football League going up against one of the best defenses. Something has got to give. What do you think gives in that game?
Give me the Jaguars, give me the Jaguars, give me the Jaguars.
Yeah.
Jacksonville's allowing 259 yards per game. The best defense normally beats the best offense. KC's off that emotional Monday night comeback. Yes, Mahomes is playing great, but this is a whole level of defense that's different than they've had. Mahomes has only been sacked 5 times on the year, never more than twice per game. But the Jacksonville Jaguars can get after them. They have shutdown corners, which makes a difference. Mahomes won't have the time he had to pass the ball as he has in previous weeks. And I think this is going to end up being a pros versus Joe games where, the fans are in love with KC, and why wouldn't you be? But how about this for a stat? KC may be 4-0 and be the darlings of most people. They're still getting outgained by 55 yards per game. Jacksonville is outgaining their foes by 105 yards. Stat-wise, if you put Band-Aids over the names and just looked at the stats, Jacksonville would be a 5 or 6 point favorite based on those year-to-date stats. When you have the worst defense, I don't care who you're playing. When you're playing a defensive team, I'm gonna back the stop side.
Yeah, there is some truth to that. Ralph Michaels, WagerTalk.com. Before I let you go, Ralph, I've been looking at the latest odds to win the Super Bowl that have come out here in the futures, and I'm stuck. My eyes keep going. Plus 1,800 Baltimore Ravens, who I think defensively aren't getting enough credit for what's been going on there and how they've been able to adjust in second half of games, just shutting people down, which is a mark of a champion. And Flacco is still playing. It's a fun defense. It's a fun offense to watch. At plus 1,800, I'm looking at the Baltimore Ravens going, there's some value there.
You know, I can't argue with that point. That wasn't in my mindset. I did play the Rams earlier in the year and had a great line on them. I also played Jared Goff to win the MVP, and, you know, those are looking great. But, you know, the thing I like about that is that you look at the competition. Since he's playing okay, but at the end of the year, they're not going to be there. We know Pittsburgh has their troubles. They're not going to be there. So you have a team that right now, with the Pittsburgh win at Pittsburgh, is going to control their division. Well, that gives you a horse in the race at the end of the year, no matter what happens. That, again, is a great thought process by you, Joe.
Yep, well, that's it. It's all about value, Ralph. If it's one thing WagerTalk.com and Ralph Michaels talks about, it's find the damn value, and there is some value in the Baltimore Ravens at plus 1,800. All right, you got to get to WagerTalk.com. You got to check out Ralph's page there at CalSportsLV. Some amazing information on his Twitter handle. Make sure you check him, follow him out. The stats, the trends, unbelievable. Ralph, thank you for taking a few minutes out, my friend, hanging out with us. Good luck this week. We'll talk again next week.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Ralph Michaels, WagerTalk.com.